Good morning, good morning. So today I wanted to spend a bit of time decoding Lotus Pose, full Lotus Pose, Padmasana. It's often a pose that is really challenging to achieve, and I think it would help if we knew why. So some people are naturally able to get into this pose and not really know why because, we're all born with different talents, skills, I guess, or different amounts of flexibility. But what it is two things. So I just wanted to chat a little bit about that first. So I'll just show you in case you're not sure what that one is. That's where you put one leg up on your lap and then you put the other leg up over top of that. So full lotus like so. Why is this so challenging to do? If you keep things super, super simple, it's really only two things that we need. One is the ability to have, I'm just going to sit up this way, the feet forward and sit completely upright. So for a lot of us, this is actually not possible, right? We're back here. So you need at least a 90-degree angle with your body and your legs. And the reason is because when you're in full lotus, you'll notice too, you want to be completely upright as well. So it's that movement of the upper leg bone in the hip socket being able to move like so. And then the second movement is external rotation. So that's where the knees go out to the sides. Or if you see ballet dancers, they walk kind of like ducks. They have the feet turned out. But it's not the feet. It's right up from the upper leg bone. It's that ability to turn outward. So we want the knees to track the feet and everything turns outward right from the hip socket. So we've got those two motions. And when you think about the hip, you can go like 360 degrees, right? There's a lot of movement that can happen in the hips, but it's just those two that we need for lotus. So it's the ability to be upright, so with our legs straight, and of course it's slightly different when we have our legs bent, but when it's straight, it's our hamstrings, so that ability to move forward, reach for your toes, and then the ability to have that external rotation, which again, it's a bit different when your legs are straight versus bent, but it's exactly the same idea. And I think it's easier to keep it simple. So today we'll work on both those two motions, but there's a third component too, which is if you work on internal rotation, that's where the knees go inward, it actually, just by happenstance, increases the external rotation. So just the act of making it looser in one direction makes it a little more accessible in the other direction. So with that in mind, instead of the two different ranges of motion, we're going to work on all four. And we'll see if we can get a nice, easy lotus pose today. And also keep in mind, if you don't, that's okay too. There's always phase one. But there's another thing that I wanted to talk about, and that's why do the knees hurt often when we do this pose? And the reason is because we just talked about how the knees need to track in the same direction as the feet when we externally rotate. But what if we don't have that range of motion in the hips? What happens is when we bend the knees and we want to get into that lotus posture, we grab the foot and then hopefully the upper leg bone will turn out when we place the foot on the leg. But what often happens is if we don't have that range of motion in the hip socket, the knee has to then take the force. And this is one thing I didn't learn in physics, I learned it in gardening, leverage, right? When I want to get that shrub out of the ground because I don't like it anymore, I don't want it in my flower bed, I get a shovel with a long handle and I put my shovel in and then I pull on the end of the handle, and that works better than just trying to pull at it. Same thing with the knee. Unfortunately, when we pull on the foot, that's leverage on the knee joint, right? We're not really able to leverage the hip from this motion. So we have to actually think and focus on the hip joint making that range of motion, not the knee. Okay, so we'll get into that as we get closer to the lotus posture, but let's start with just a little warm up. So lifting up nice and tall, let's bring the feet forward. We'll do like a modified sun salutation sitting. I sounded way too excited about that. I love sun salutations, so even if we're sitting and we're doing partly a sun salutation, I get super stoked. So lifting up tall, and if you're not able to sit upright, then do like I'm doing and sit on a folded blanket. I normally have good range of motion, but I've been not stretching a lot lately, so I will be definitely looking forward to this class as well to get more mobile. So lifting up nice and tall, let's inhale. Let's raise the arms up out to the sides. You know how I like to do my sun salutations forward, but let's go out to the sides and feel really expansive and even back a little bit, like you're gathering up sunshine. On an inhale, raise the arms up, and on the exhale, forward fold, reaching for those toes. So you can almost pretend you're standing up, but you're going into your forward fold. This first one will hang out here for just a few moments, and we definitely don't want to be pulling the flesh away from our backside, but let's do instead a little bit of a rocking back and forth, especially since this is the morning, and I always feel like really stiff through the back of the neck and the backs of the legs, that first stretch forward. So just a couple little rocks side to side. Don't worry about technique. This is not a proper yoga move. This is just an organic kind of a flowing motion. And then find stillness in center. Heading into our flat back, you can place the hands on the shins looking up. So feel that nice stretch. And release. And then on an inhale, come on all the way up, reaching way up high in our seated Urdhva Hastasana, our hands up pose. And then bringing it back into Dandasana staff pose. Here we go again. Inhale, raise the arms up, but even back a little bit like you're scooping up sunshine. And on the exhale, forward fold. This time we'll keep flowing. Inhale, looking up. Exhale, release. Inhale with a long straight spine all the way up, reaching up high. And exhale, returning to staff pose. Again, inhale, arms go up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, looking up. Exhale, release. Inhale, long straight spine all the way up, reaching up high. And exhale back to staff pose. Let's do two more. Inhale, arms go up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, looking up. Exhale, release. Inhale with a long straight spine all the way up, reaching way up high. And exhale, back to staff pose. Last one. Inhale, reaching up. Exhale, forward fold, reaching for those toes. Inhale, looking up. Exhale, release. And inhale, long straight spine all the way up. And exhale, returning to staff pose. From here, we'll head forward to hands and knees. So I like to cross my legs and bring my hands forward. I'm going to keep my blanket here. You can too, putting it about 2/3 of the way back. We'll do quite a bit on our knees today, so I like to have a little bit of cushion beneath there. So before we head into downward dog, I like to warm up my wrists a little bit. So just some organic movements here on hands and knees. Warming up the hands, warming up the wrists. Just a little side to side. Maybe a little bit of a forward and back too, just really gentle. Forward and back, little wrist stretches. And then we'll head up and back to downward dog, but let's do something a little bit in between. So tuck the toes under and then allow the hips to melt back. So what this is doing is creating that same sort of motion as our forward fold, but just with the legs bent. So it's like half the leg, and trying to feel if you can feel a stretch in your hip joint. I do. If you naturally have more range of motion in that area, you might not feel this stretch at all. I feel it in my hips and also in my Achilles tendons and a little bit the calves, which is just nice and more of a bonus. You don't need that for Lotus Pose, but why not multitask? Then we'll head a little bit forward, coming up and back to downward dog. Maybe walking it out a little bit. From here, let's lower through hands and knees and then step the right foot forward and then come on up, hands on the front knee. So here we're working on a movement we don't need in lotus posture, but it's having that one leg behind you and feeling that stretch in the hip. And what we'll do is focus, actually first, just hang out here. Especially if you're feeling as tight as me, I just need to just hang out here for a second. We'll do another round where we focus on the thing I was going to mention. But for now, just hang out here for a sec. I've been doing so much walking lately, like so much walking, so my hips are so tight, but it feels good. It's nice to do that. Sometimes we feel like we're regressing a bit. You know, I used to think, oh my gosh, I'm so inflexible now. What have I done? But no, it's good. You work on strength a bit, and then, yeah, you move backwards a little bit with the stretching, but it's not. It's all moving forward. And sometimes you have to take a step back to take 2 steps forward. So this is now me working on loosening it up a little bit after that strength. So, and now I actually prefer to work like that. A little bit of strength, and then flip over to a little bit of flexibility. Let's head into the other side. So just super relaxed, back through hands and knees. Take a second. And then left foot forward. Without focusing on anything, just hanging out in a little bit of a low lunge. And just a couple deep breaths here. If you're naturally quite flexible in this position, then you might not feel as much. But for me right now, I am breathing through this, and I don't want it to be too much of a stretch. So I'm actually placing a bit of weight onto my knee to not go quite as deep, because it is fairly intense for me this morning. So that's something you can do to modify, and modifications are good. We are most effective at stretching when we're feeling a gentle stretch, because that way we can melt into it. If I relax everything, like I let go of my arms, now I have to kind of push away using my strength, and that's the opposite of stretching. So it has its place too, but for right now we want to just get a nice loose stretch. Let's come on out, and we'll repeat that, adding one more thing. So through hands and knees, once again right side. So right foot steps forward, come on up. That feels better already. So from here, what I was going to mention before is let's focus on, I don't know if you can see, I've got a sweater on because I'm a bit cold, but if I just lower, my back is arched. So what I want to do is focus on my femur bone. So this is the upper leg bone moving forward. And I'm almost kind of tucking my tail under a little bit just to get the hip joint moving. So my leg bone in the hip joint. If I just normally do a low lunge, I kind of arch through the back and it's all fine and good, but I'm specifically trying to loosen up the hip socket in order to access a deeper lotus pose. So that's what's kind of cool about yoga. You can use the same pose and utilize it in a different way each time. Let's come on out, back through hands and knees, and other side. So left foot steps forward and come on up. So when I just come up without thinking, my back is quite arched. So I'm going to try to tuck the tail under a little bit and actually focus on, it's like I'm trying to lay my back leg on the floor, but still have my pelvis upright. So it's targeting the hip socket. And then we'll head back to hands and knees. Okay, from here, what we can do is head forward if you've got a cushion behind you like I do. So my knees are on the floor. We'll head into shoelaces. So from here, left crosses behind right. And then I like to kind of scooch them in a bit. And then step the feet apart and then sit back carefully. So if you think you need more than a little cushion, grab a block or whatever you need and slowly, slowly, slowly heading into our shoelaces posture. Oi. So even this pose isn't specifically the angle that we need for lotus posture, but it is similar. And like we talked about before, more range of motion in every direction will help with those hips in order to get our lotus posture. So that's sort of one of the little secrets and tips and tricks, is it's not just lotus, repeating lotus over and over and over again that'll help you get lotus posture. It's doing other hip mobility exercises that will help attain that lotus posture. Right now, focusing on trying not to feel too much of a stretch. If you do, sit up on another block or another blanket or something. Really mild, gentle stretch. We're not holding for too long. So it's not quite yin we're doing today. It's loosening things up, trying to get things nice and loose. And then we'll come on out. Let's head into a downward dog between sides. It's kind of like a little palate cleanser or a little counter kind of a pose. Maybe walking it out a little bit. And then other side. So lowering through hands and knees, this time right knee behind the left, scooching those knees together, stepping the feet apart, and then super gentle back onto your mat or your cushion or your block. And sometimes we have one hip that's a little more flexible than the other. So there's my left leg on top is not quite as mobile. So just adjusting as needed so that it's a mild stretch. And a few deep breaths. And then we'll slowly come on out. And then we'll head into windshield wipers. So we've been doing a bit of external rotation. Now we'll do internal rotation. So for windshield wipers, leaning back onto the hands, which is just nice because it's slightly different. Step the feet apart, about mat's width apart. And then we'll send one knee down towards the floor. And then switch sides. Really trying to target the hip socket. So we're not stretching the knee. We are trying to isolate the hip joint, feeling space in the hip socket. And just keep repeating. We'll stay here for like a minute or so and just go at your own pace, holding for just a few counts on each side. And just a little bit longer, finishing up whatever your last round is. And things should start feeling a little bit looser already. Okay. Let's bring the feet forward into Dandasana staff pose and just a couple little knee taps. From here, another direction that the hips can move in is when we work on our center splits, our straddle. So, I do want to be up on my cushion, but I want to turn sideways on my mat because I like having my heels on my mat because it provides just a little bit of cushion. And then I like to sit up on my blanket, stepping the feet apart as far as they'll go, taking a second, lifting up tall, and then we start to make our journey forward. So maybe that's a little bit, maybe it's a lot of it, doesn't matter. Looking for a really nice, mild, gentle stretch. And if you're still not able to make the journey forward at all, bring the hands behind you. We're looking for a stretch on the inseams of the legs, but it is good to get the body at least perpendicular if possible. So if it requires being up on a blanket, that's okay. But if you're still not able to be upright, let's bring the fingers behind. So I've had people ask me, is it better to be like up on 4 or 5 blocks? Not really, I don't think. Having the fingers behind is okay. The last pose we did, the shoelaces though, I would prefer to be up on a couple blocks. Be up as high as you need to have the body upright, just because that way you can do both legs and you can get that external rotation going. For this posture, the reason why I don't have that same sort of, it's not a rule, but suggestion is because when your fingertips are behind you, whether they're behind you or in front of you, you're still feeling the same, it's the same motion and it's the same stretch. So wherever you're at, breathing deep, looking for a mild stretch. Now that I've been in here a few moments, I feel like I can go a little bit further, but not wanting to push things too much. I should rephrase that, not pushing anything at all. Making sure you find your edge, but don't push past it. Always, always. And then slowly come on out. So again, we're not there too long. And then let's work on fire log pose. So for this one, stacking one leg on top of the other, ankle over knee, knee over ankle, and the lower legs are parallel. So this one again, add a cushion or a block right beneath the top knee if needed, or maybe the bottom knee, or maybe both. And then trying to be upright as well. If not, bring the fingertips behind. But for this one, actually this one, it would be nice to be at least upright. So maybe up on a couple blocks if needed. And keeping in mind the blocks are to help that forward motion of the legs in the hip socket, not the external rotation. And the external rotation is the external rotation. But we have those two motions that we're working on in this type of pose. This one is the closest to Lotus Pose, this fire log here. So this is probably the best prep for the actual Lotus posture. And the other ones are the assist. So when I say don't push it, I should also say if you do have the flexibility though, make sure you are feeling a stretch. Sometimes if you are more flexible, like for me when I'm talking, fire log, sometimes I just pop into it and start talking, but I'm not actually feeling a stretch. So make sure you're not being lazy like I just was. Feel the actual stretch. And then we'll switch sides. Setting up whatever you need for blocks or blankets or cushions. Make sure you feel the stretch. without going too far. While you're in a stretch too, it's nice to think of the two motions that you're working towards. So that's part of our proprioception that we're trying to develop in yoga. Like that's one of the main goals of yoga for your physical practice is proprioception. Where is my body in space without having to look in a mirror, without having to look at my body, feeling where your body is in space. So while I'm in this pose here, I'm feeling two motions. One is the leg bones are moving out to the sides, right from the hip socket, right? I can almost visualize the joint. It's like a ball and socket joint, and the leg is turning out. I'm also noticing how I am upright. So my leg has that forward motion. Even though it's bent, it's still a forward motion in the hip socket. So it's a little bit complicated if you're not used to visualizing things in space without looking at it. It gets easier over time though. And then let's come on out. So now we have moved in every direction with the legs in the hip sockets. So now the only thing left to do is full Padmasana. So from here, there's a couple things we want to think about. One is no leverage on the knees. We want the knees to not feel anything. So let's start with, what way am I facing? I'll do like a kitty corner here. So starting in Dandasana staff pose, what we want to do is bend the knee. So we'll start with the left leg, bend the leg. And I want to place my left foot on my right thigh. If I just pick up the foot, I can feel that leverage on the knee. So I might want to pick up the knee as well. So I'm going to pick up the knee and the foot, lift it up. So now they're the same level. My knee and my ankle are at the same level when I pick it up. It's not torquing it like that, okay? Because that can cause some pain if I'm not actually externally rotating. So I'm thinking about the hip joint, and I'm thinking about the leg in the hip joint. It's externally rotating. It's moving forward towards the body. And then I'm going to place my foot in the hip crease. So eventually this gets fairly particular. Where exactly do you want the foot to be? Well, if you have just the toes on the thigh, then you're going to sickle the foot and overstretch the outside of the ankle, which we don't want. So a full right in the hip crease so that the foot's popping out the other end is eventually where we want this to be. But then before we do the second leg, there's a tendency to want to lean back. We want to have that forward motion, or the leg moving up towards the body, and that external rotation of the leg. So I want to move my body forward until my left knee reaches the floor without any torque on the knee. If I'm not feeling that at all, I'm going to try it again while up on a blanket or up on a block. Okay? If I'm okay so far, then I'll do the exact same thing with the right foot. So bending the right leg, allowing it to turn out to the side, and then if I'm like, whoa, I'm maxed here, I'll just scooch my foot underneath, like so. And this is my modified Padmasana. If I'm like, yeah, no, I'm okay still, then I can pick up the knee and the foot and place the foot on the other thigh. And then let the knees move to the ground. Ta-da! We're in Lotus. Wherever you're at, wherever you get stuck, just hold. The other thing too is right now my Lotus is pretty tight, so I can feel my shins against each other, and I can feel this foot starting to sickle, but that's okay. It's been a while. And then to come out, we reverse course. And so that was left leg on top. So we'll do the other side. Okay, ready? So same thing again, other side. Bend the right leg and then pick up the foot, but also let the knee pick up as well. And place the foot in that hip crease is ideal. And then focus right from here. I don't want to feel any torque on the knee. I want the hip to be doing the rotation, not the knee. No rotation in the knee. The knee is square. And then I'm going to lean forward, forward, forward until my knee reaches closer to the floor. Then I'll try the other leg. And if that's it, I just place the foot beneath the knee and I'm in like a modified lotus. And this is a great place to start. If I'm okay, I'll unscooch the foot from beneath. And then lift that foot and the knee as well. So I'm leaning back a little bit. It's kind of a cheat to get into it. And then place the foot on the thigh. And then I'm still thinking, really trying to visualize the hip sockets, feeling the bones inside the joint externally rotating. So they're tipping out to the sides. My knees are moving out to the sides, but not just the knees, right from the top of the leg bone. And then we're in. So again, mine's a little bit tight. If you want to kind of pull it together, you can. Once you're in, you can sort of, I don't want that foot to sickle, so I pull it in a little more. And the longer I'm here, the more comfortable it'll get too. But that's about enough of that, I think. Let's come on out of our lotus posture and head into Dandasana, staff pose, and then a couple little knee taps. And guess what? That is it. So if you were feeling super ambitious, you could repeat the whole sequence again, and you would find that your lotus posture is just a little bit more loose. So one thing is, again, if you just do this specific sequence that we did today, which is all four sides or all four directions where the leg bone can move in the hip socket, you'll find your lotus pose just gets more and more loose. When you're doing it during the day, like during your daily practice, just repeat. Your lotus pose will be a little bit better or a little bit deeper. You repeat, it'll be a little bit deeper still. If you're looking for that long term, like I want it to be a little bit looser tomorrow, then we do today's practice in a yin style, which means just the whole practice will be a little bit longer, but hold each pose for, instead of 1 minute, like 3. So there's some tips and tricks. I hope that helps. And I hope you have a really, really good rest of your day. And I will see you next time. Namaste, everyone.